Have you ever wondered how strong people can be when faced with the toughest situations? This is the story of Flight 571, a plane that was meant to fly a short distance from Uruguay to Chile. But things went very wrong. This isn't just any survival story, it's a true test of human strength and hope. Join us as we uncover the mystery of Flight 571. On the 12th of October 1972, a plane filled with young rugby players and their friends and family lifted off from Uruguay. Their destination was Santiago, Chile, a trip that should have taken just 3 hours. But as they flew, the towering Andes Mountains loomed ahead, a massive range stretching across South America, second only to the Himalayas in height. These mountains, often admired for their beauty, would soon become a scene of disaster for the passengers. That day, a fierce storm raged over the mountains, making it impossible for the plane to continue. The pilots made a cautious decision to land in Mendoza, Argentina, to wait out the bad weather. The next day, with clear skies, the plane took to the air again. But as they neared Santiago, still high among the peaks of the Andes, the plane encountered violent turbulence. The aircraft shook violently, alarms blared, and the passengers, unaware of the danger, joked among themselves. It wasn't until the clouds parted and a mountain appeared alarmingly close that the severity of their situation became clear. In a desperate attempt to avoid a collision, the pilots tried to gain altitude, but it was too late. The plane struck the mountain, tearing apart and scattering across the snow-covered slopes. The unthinkable had happened. The plane had crashed in one of the most remote places on Earth. After the plane hit the mountain, it broke into pieces. The front part of the plane, where people sit, fell down a snowy slope. The pilots who were flying the plane did not survive, but 33 of the 45 passengers inside the plane miraculously survived. These survivors were now stuck on a cold, snowy mountain. They had no easy way to call for help or get down. They were hurt and scared, but they were alive. That night, they tried to stay warm and alive inside the broken plane. They hoped that someone would find them soon. The first night was very cold, and some of the injured people did not make it. The survivors knew they had to be strong and smart to stay alive. They used what they could find in the plane to keep warm and wait for help. But as the days went on, it became harder to keep hoping. So there they were, the survivors of Flight 571, right in the middle of the snowy Andes. They had a big problem: no more food. 2 guys, still studying to be doctors, were doing their best to help everyone with their injuries. The plane was white, just like the snow all around, so the rescue teams flying above couldn't spot them. After a while, the search stopped. The survivors found out when they got a broken radio to work. They were really sad. Some cried and some prayed. They had a little bit of food at first, some chocolate, nuts and sweets. They shared these tiny bits, making them last as long as they could. Now, these survivors, they were a tough bunch, but even the toughest folks get hungry, right? So they had to think hard about what to do. They looked around, and there was nothing to munch on. No berries, no critters, nothing, just the cold and their growling bellies. They huddled up and made a plan. It was a plan nobody ever wants to make. They decided to eat the only food they had, their friends who didn't make it. It sounds really scary, doesn't it? But it was either that or starve, and they wanted to live. They wanted to see their families again and feel the sun that wasn't just cold light bouncing off the snow, so they did it. They survived by doing the one thing they never thought they'd have to. And you know what? It kept them alive. It gave them the strength to keep going, to keep hoping that someone would find them. They knew they couldn't just sit around waiting to be saved. They had to take matters into their own hands. 3 of the strongest decided to go out and look for help. They thought they weren't too far from people and places, but they were in for a surprise. Before setting off, they took a little break to gather their strength. They knew this wasn't going to be a walk in the park. They packed up some food, the little they had, and put on their warmest clothes. It was time to brave the mountains. They walked and walked, climbing up and sliding down the snowy slopes. Along the way, they found bits of the plane that had fallen off earlier. Inside, they found some goodies, chocolates, clothes, and even a bottle of rum. It was like finding treasure in the middle of nowhere. They tried to get the plane's radio to work, hoping to send out a call for help. But no luck there. The radio just wouldn't start, so they kept on walking. They climbed mountains and crossed valleys, all without a map or a compass, just the sun during the day and the stars at night to guide them. After many days, they finally saw a river. Follow the river, they thought. It's got to lead to people. And it did. After what felt like forever, they saw signs of life, cows grazing in the fields. They were so tired, but they had made it. They saw some men on horses across the river. They tried to shout, but the river was too loud. One of the men saw them and understood they needed help. He couldn't cross the river right then, but he promised to come back the next day, and he did. He brought paper and a pencil, tied them to a rock, and threw it across the river. For the first time, the survivors could send a message back to the world. They wrote about the crash and where the others were waiting. The man on the horse, he read the note and knew what he had to do. He rode off to get help. And that's how the rescue began. Those 3 had walked so far, fought so hard, and now, finally, help was on the way. The man on the horse, Sergio, knew what he had to do. He rode for hours to get help, and when he did, the whole world started to listen. Helicopters came flying in, and with the help of the survivors, they found the crash site. Can you believe it? After 70 days, the rest of the survivors were rescued. They were in bad shape, but they were alive. They had made it through the cold, the hunger, and the loneliness. The news spread everywhere. People couldn't believe that these guys had survived for so long in the mountains. It was like a miracle. They showed us that no matter how bad things get, there's always hope. There's always a chance. This story, The Mystery of Flight 571, it's more than just a story. It's a lesson about never giving up. It's about fighting to live, no matter what. And that's something we can all remember when times get tough, so that's the end of our tale. But it's not just an ending, it's a beginning too, a beginning of hope and the power of the human spirit. And that's something worth remembering. Thank you for watching our journey through the mystery of Flight 571. Did you enjoy this video? Check out these other clips from Knowledge Matrix and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.